So this is no-till brassicas. I just got done loading the drill up. It's hot and muggy. I do not like hot weather, so I'm ready for this to be done. But no-till brassicas, I'm in big equipment right now. I've done this stuff with four-wheelers, I've done it with little tractors. You do not need that big of stuff. And then you can also broadcast into crops. So I always say rain or shine July 29 for brassicas. So I'll start a week earlier, I'll end a week later. And you know, if you're doing some kind of blend, that's fine. If you're making your own, I just generally do purple top turnips and groundhog radish, which is the same as tillage or Daikon, and I'll do roughly 2 to 3 pounds of purple top turnips, and I'll do about 3 or 4 pounds of radish. The radish matures faster, so as it gets later in the season, I'll go heavier on the turnips, or heavier on the radish if I'm getting late, and then the earlier I do it, if I'm ahead of schedule, I'd go heavier on the radish, or the turnips, so things don't get too woody and nasty and gross. So yeah, if you're doing it really early, go heavier on your turnips, which take longer to mature. If you're doing it late, go heavier on your radish. And if you're overseeding into crops, probably radish will be a little better, but I'd still do both. You can do canola or rapeseed, which is really good as a component too. And without a soil test, if you're not burning down clover like this, I burnt down clover. I'm not putting any fertilizer down, and I'm no-tilling this in. So if you are without a soil test, just looking to roughly get your fertility right using conventional, I'd run roughly NP and K. If you told the co-op you want a treated urea, don't forget that. Treated urea to put it on top. You can do liquid nitrogen. And if you're burning down clovers, you probably won't need any, but I'd run approximately 100 pounds of actual N per acre and maybe 40 or 50 pounds of P and K each. So just tell the co-op 100, 50, 50 for example. And that's just a ballpark, and that doesn't address the pH or the micronutrients, and I won't get into that right now. But I did burn down clover. I've had manure on here. I've got my micronutrients right. I've got my pH right. Which everybody wants to do that. Everybody wants to get their soil set right. So the small equipment you can use, you could use a small tractor with a minimal till drill, which you can buy those for nothing. Really cheap. I'll use a cultimulcher sometimes, where it's got the packers and then it's got the tines that kind of just scratch the surface. I guess you'd call that no-till, but it's really effective. And then I use a no-till drill, and I will flip this around here for my no-till drill. So I think we covered everything. See if I'm forgetting anything. Iowawhitetail if I'm forgetting anything, but a lot of ways to do this with smaller stuff. So there's my corn, looks awesome. Did not fence that. Here's the edge of it where the deer just destroy it. This is where they start. And I've got some alfalfa right here, and then I've got clover, and I do like having both. And then the crummy stuff, or stuff I want to rotate out, we'll see that in just a second here. And I burn it down with labeled rated 2,4-D, since there's so many formulations, LV6, LV4. I use an ester, and I use a labeled rate, and my labeled rate on this is a 7-day planting window. So you want to wait 7 days after you spray it to plant. And then I use Roundup as well. So Roundup will not kill a lot of things, especially clovers. So the 2,4-D is pretty essential. So I'll burn it down, I'll wait 7 days, and I come back and I just drill it. Or you could use a cultimulcher, cultipacker. You could use a harrow. You could lightly disc it if you're like, hey, I want to do light tillage. Lightly disc it. The one thing you do not need to do is to tear up the soil and go 6 inches deep, or rotary till it. Go a foot deep. 6 inches. You absolutely do not need to do that. And the more you work the soil, your moisture is going to go bye-bye. You're going to have erosion, all sorts of other stuff. Soil ecology, I could get into it for a long time, but I stay away from that pretty hard. And 7 days, this stuff's about cooked. I might go in here and hit it with clethodim once, because I do have some grasses that kind of bounce back, they're pretty dead. So just be really careful with your tillage. There's no reason to be tearing up your soil. And I think I covered the seed rate. I think I covered everything. And there we go. I'm just putting it right barely into the surface, like 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch. Packing it in there. You do not need that 1 inch deep, too deep. You don't want it too thick. And then I would come back later and check it for germination. If it's spotty, you can use a bag seeder to fill it in, and you can use a bag seeder to get a lot established, especially if it's into crops that are kind of open canopy. So bag seeder will be your friend later, and then a sprayer with clethodim and crop oil to kill grasses will be your friend as well. And the less you tear up your soil, you have less weeds, and sometimes it does take a year or two to really cycle this, but you'll have less weeds, and you will retain all your moisture. Where everybody's dry, you're not going to lose all that moisture out of the soil, and that's what working the soil does. It just loses all your moisture, kills the ecology, creates erosion, brings weed seeds to the top. I mean, the list just goes on. So I'll update this with how my brassicas are doing later, but I guarantee you they will be really good. My clover that needs clipped. Here's the end of the brassicas. See the corn out there through my dirty windows. And I like a lot of diversity, so check this out. You see it's mainly clover, and now it starts getting into alfalfa. Now it's all alfalfa with a little tiny bit of clover in there, probably from some previous seeds that were there, but predominantly alfalfa. And I love watching the difference between the clover and the alfalfa and how the deer react to them. And I've done some videos on that before. So a lot of diversity out here, and I know things are going to turn out well. So ready for summer to be done too. And I actually drove by my barn, and there is an old cultimulcher. Those things are fantastic. They're pretty cheap, pretty reasonable. They're heavy, and they do a really nice job for a lot of things. I use that for alfalfa, brassicas. It's got the 2 rollers and the tines. I've got another one with 2 sets of wheels. It's a lot heavier, but that's an example. And it is a nice old farm implement.